Hey everybody, it's Angela and I am back with another process video, and this one is for SaCrafters. She had sent me some of her product and asked me to do some mixed media designs for her using her chipboard products. And even though I'm kind of away a lot this month because there's a lot going on at the farm, I told her I would try my best to use up some of these products, and so I'm having a great time with this. And what I decided to do to start this layout was to use a piece of watercolor paper, and I just spritzed it with a little bit of water first, and then I'm using two colors of the Tim Holtz Distress inks and the packaging technique. And the inks are the Faded Jeans, and I believe Stormy Skies is the other one. And you can see I just kind of smooshed it down, I splattered some things, and I used my heat gun a little bit, but I wanted to really let that color soak in, so I just set the piece of paper aside to dry a little bit more naturally, just to make those colors more vibrant. And while that dries, I'm going to take some of the SaCrafters products. She sent me these cute little flowers that have this kind of like a starbursty effect to them. And they were kind of my inspiration for this layout. They kind of reminded me of fireworks. And I have this really cute picture of my granddaughter from this 4th of July at a parade that I wanted to scrapbook. So these were my inspiration piece. But I actually got interrupted. I had to go to the farm in the middle of doing this layout, so I forgot about them when I got back, and I almost forgot to use them. Even though they're my inspiration piece, I almost forgot them, but they did thankfully make it onto the layout in the end. So I have the Love This Moment piece I'm going to use also, and I'm going to do a different technique to it. But for these starburst flowers, I'm just going to emboss them using my Versamark ink, which is kind of a clear, sticky ink. I'm putting that on there, and then a little bit of gold embossing powder, and using my heat tool to activate that embossing powder and make it all sparkly. And there was a place there where I didn't quite get it all, so I'm reheating it, putting a little more on, heating it up just to make sure I get good coverage. And I do that to all 5 of these little flowers. And then I'm also going to use this star stencil that's from SaCrafters as well, and it's like cascading stars, and I'm going to emboss them as well. So I'm using that same Versamark ink pad and pressing it through the stencil. And I know you can't see the pattern right now, but you'll see it as soon as I put the embossing powder on there. And they're just some different size stars that cascade down, and I've had this stencil for a while and I love it. I've gotten a lot of use out of this stencil. So yeah, I just love using the embossing technique with this, and it's just so beautiful. So I'm just brushing off any errant powder so that it doesn't get a bunch of extra speckles on my layout. And then I'm using my heat gun to set that as well. And I just love the nice bright stars that it gives. And you can use, you know, just individual stars or the whole thing or portions of it. So it's a really versatile stencil. So I go ahead and I get all of those heat set, and I love how it's looking. Very 4th of July. And then I just use my little brush and put my powder back in the jar there before it goes everywhere. And I'm going to I clean Versamark off my stencil. First I used a baby wipe, and then I just used this little pump Windex cleaner, and I just kind of clean it off so it doesn't hurt your stencil at all. You just kind of have to, you know, make sure you clean it up and not let that Versamark dry on there. And then I just kind of clean my desk, and we're good to go. So I have this Pebbles pad, and then these star dies. It's a Dries die, and also a little star off of this tag die from Hot Off the Press. These flowers from Hot Off the Press, flower dies, and then this flower punch. And I use all of those with the Pebbles paper there to cut out all these little shapes. I also have these Heidi Swapp chipboard pieces that were part of a Project Life pack. And then these other Pebbles die cut pieces, 4th of July pieces, but I don't actually wind up using any of those. But I just kind of set everything there. And then I have one more stencil from Sa that has like some little small stars on it that are all the same size. And I wanted to put those in the background too, to put some extra stars coming out of that cloud of ink. And so I'm testing my Distress ink pads, and it wasn't quite the right color, so I tried the oxide and they were both too green. So I take my Distress stain there, the dauber of the same colors I used to do the packaging technique, and I just dip a cosmetic wedge into that and then push it through the stencil, and it works just fine. It actually works better because it's exactly the same shade of blue as the ink that's already on there, so it just looks like some stars are kind of coming out of that cloud of blue ink. And it's a subtle thing, but it's really pretty, and it just puts more stars to that star motif. So I'm really liking that, and it's a smaller stencil and you can move it around the page, and I've gotten a lot of use out of that one as well. So I go ahead and do that, and then I take the Love This Moment, and I want to use again the same color of Distress stain. It's a little bit darker on here, so I kind of fiddle around using the two Distress stains and the ink pads and stuff, and then I wind up doing something completely different here later. But I wanted to try this technique, and that's what's nice about using a chipboard word. It's, you know, a little tougher and a little stronger because it's so thick versus having just like a cardstock cut file sentiment. It can take a lot of ink and a lot of playing around and mixed media, and so I just had fun kind of playing with my inks and seeing what did what and everything, and it didn't hurt this chipboard at all that I layered so much stuff on it. Now I'm doing this portion. I had to leave for the farm, and so I was gone for 3 or 4 days and couldn't work on this layout, and now I've come back to it. So there's kind of a little bit of a disconnect on this, and you'll see that I almost forget to use some of the products that I had pulled out because I didn't know quite where I had left off. But I took that Pebbles pad and put a few little layers behind my photo, which I must not have filmed. And now I'm taking the pieces I had set in that tray and pulling them out. And I just didn't like how bright the Pebbles die cuts were. I liked the ones, the pre-done die cuts. I liked the ones that I had cut out of that other Pebbles Project Life pad. I just liked the colors were a little more muted, and that photo of Allison is also a little more muted. I think there's a little bit of a filter that her parents put on it or something when they put it up on Facebook. So I liked the more muted color. It kind of gives it more of an old-fashioned look. So I didn't go with the pre-done die cuts that I had pulled from that other pack. I went with just what I had cut out. You could see all the stars and flowers that I cut, and I just rolled some of the flowers around on that mouse pad, and I used the back of a pen and kind of rolled it around there, and that just kind of cupped the flowers and gave them a little bit more dimension. And then I'm also going through this Heidi Swap chipboard pieces from my stash and just pulling out a bunch of gold ones I think I might use, a bunch of gold stars, and there's a few hearts and other things that I don't wind up using. Mostly I just use the gold stars and circles out of this pack. So there I have all my stuff kind of sitting out to the side, and again I'm looking at those other Pebbles items, and they were just too bright, so I set the pinwheels aside and just go with what I die cut. And I want them to kind of cascade along with those stars from the stencil. So I'm just kind of doing a rough layout of how I think it might go, and I'm liking that. And then I'm not sure exactly where I'm going to put my sentiment, but I kind of like it up there where it kind of flows a little better up there. But I'm still not quite liking the ink. It made it look a little bit too black, and it's just not working for me. So I go to my stash and I look through. I didn't want to just make it gold. I could have made it gold, but I thought I had enough gold on this layout already. So I looked in my stash and I found some blue glitter embossing powder, and I thought it looked a little too blue, at first, but I thought, oh heck, why not? Let's just go for it. And I can make it gold in the end, you know, if I still don't like this blue, but I wound up loving it. So like I said, it's a good thing that this is made out of chipboard, and it's tough enough to handle all the things that I threw at it here. So I just do the exact same technique, put the sticky Versamark on there and the powder, and then just heat set it. And it's a really pretty sparkle. I don't even know what brand of embossing powder this is. Probably something I got at Tuesday Morning, because that's pretty much where all of my supplies come from, it seems like lately. And yeah, so I really love how that turned out. It gave it some sparkle, but it's blue and not, you know, more gold on the layout. So again, I'm just cleaning it, making sure any loose powder comes off so that it doesn't keep shedding. That's a nice thing about heat embossing. It sets it, and then you don't have all those little bits falling off all the time like regular glitter. So there, I'm just cleaning up my embossing stuff, cleaning up my desk a little bit. And I really love that. I love the color of blue that it made it and the sparkle that it has on it. So that is going to be kind of my design, just kind of cascading from the upper left to the bottom right. And so I use a little bit of the fun foam to pop my photo up. So I'm just using that. And that's the stuff like everybody uses from Walmart. I love that stuff. And then I'm also heating up my glue gun, because I'm going to use my glue gun for a lot of the flowers. But I'm going to use my Scotch Quick Dry in the fine line bottle to put down this chipboard piece, since it is so delicate and fine lined. This bottle works perfect for that. So I just put glue on that. And then before I put my photo down, I want to put some thread behind it. And you know me, I suck at doing this thread thing, and I put it under there and I get it caught in my flower, and yeah, so I always struggle with thread. I'm no Missy Whidden here. So, but I'm still trying, you know, practice is going to make me better at this. And I just pull out some blue and some red and some white to put underneath my photo and just have pieces of that poking out. And so I also use my Scotch Quick Dry adhesive on the back of this, but I wind up putting a little bit of hot glue on it as well later, because it wasn't sticking for some reason. Probably just because I was impatient. So there I take my hot glue and I start putting down some of these larger flowers that I die cut. And I want 2 of the larger flowers at the bottom and then just 1 at the top. And then I'm infilling with some of the smaller flowers and making sure that I spread the reds and blues around the page. Here I'm taking one of the Heidi Swapp stars and putting that in. And yeah, it just wasn't sticking. So I put a little bit of hot glue on there. And then I put this one, I put up on top my photo just to help integrate having some things below and some things above the photo. There I put a larger red one to get some more red color up there at the top. I'm just seeing, you know, what else will work. Sticking some more chipboard up there to give some more dimension. And at this point, I'd forgotten all about those SaCrafters flowers that I had embossed before I went to work at the farm. And I think it'll be pretty soon where I see them sitting on my desk and I'm like, ah, my flowers. So, because those were my inspiration piece and I really love them. using some little stars for the centers of my flowers, little gold stars. And I really like how this is coming together. I'm sorry it's a little bit out of frame. There we go. I must have realized it was down too low. So I love how this is coming together. And I'm just putting more chipboard pieces, and I'm thinking about, I want to really layer it and make it full looking. So I'm looking around my desk, and there's where I realize, because these were my inspiration. So I totally started tucking these in and around the clusters that I already had. I had to cut the stems off because I couldn't, the other items were already glued down. So it made it a little easier. And I love how those poke out like little fireworks. And they just lend something so different and organic to the whole layout. I think they really make the layout. So I was so glad that I saw them before it was too late to get them on here. And I like the little round circles at the end of each of the flower pieces because I have a few circular chipboard pieces I had put in two of my flowers. So this just echoes those flower centers as well. Just using a little bit of hot glue since I've got ink and thread and die cut pieces everywhere. And yeah, so I just love, love, love those flowers. Then I add a few more stars. And then I realized, I really need to make sure I write the names of which grandkid it is. And so first I looked for some word fragments but couldn't find anything, but I knew I needed to put her name and the date and all that kind of good stuff. And I didn't really have anything. I looked for a tag in here to see if there's like a tag I can use, but the white in here is a little bit off. So I find this blue that matches kind of the blue ink that I have in the background. Even though I don't have any flowers or stars cut out in that color, it does match into the ink in the background. So I just cut a tag out of that, and I'm going to cut it in half, and I'm just going to slip it under the bottom edge of the photo. So you won't see a lot of it anyway, but I do want to make sure and get that labeled. So I'm going to take my just a fine line pen and write her name and the date. And then I put a little bit of hot glue on the back of that. I'm going to poke it up underneath there and get some of the thread to come over the top. And I think that just kind of finishes it out and make sure that it gets labeled before, it's too late and I never go back and do it. So now I want to, my watercolor paper is 11.5 by 11.5, so I want to mount it on some cardstock. So I'm looking through for a nice thick dark blue cardstock since there was a tiny bit of warping of my paper, so I want it to lay down nice and flat. So I want a nice thick cardstock to help hold it flat. And then I'm just using my ATG, and I'm using quite a bit of adhesive on this just to, like I said, stretch this back out. And then that is my completed layout, and I just love how it turned out. And I'm going to put links to all of Sa's products down below and links to her site. And you can use the code AngelaFans when you order, and for all orders over $30, you get a 10% discount if you use AngelaFans, and I'll put that down below as well. But you can see the 2 star stencils that I used, the flower chipboard pieces that I think just made the whole layout, and then that gorgeous sentiment with the blue glitter embossing on it. Yeah, I just love how this turned out. So again, I will put links to all the products below, And thank you guys so much for watching, and I will be back with more videos using SaCrafters products here in the future. So I will be seeing you soon. Talk to you later. Bye.